Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I'd like to welcome you to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Municipality of Thames Centre. The date is Monday, March 25th, 2004, and we are meeting in the Municipal Office Council Chambers at 4305 Hamilton Road in the village of Dorchester. I would like to call this meeting to order at 5 p.m. I'm of the opinion and the advice that there are no additions to the agenda. So may I have a mover and a seconder to accept the agenda? Deputy Mayor Smybert and Councillor Lockie. All in favor? Good. Motion. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Can we get Chantel or?
Yep, I'm online. Can you hear me, Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Perfect. So this evening, although not in person, I will still be declaring item number 8.1, minor variance application A2-24. I am the applicant and owner of the property requesting the minor variance this evening.
Thank you, Chantel. Anyone else with any disclosures? No, seeing none. Move on to announcements. Just very briefly, at this time, I'd like to take a moment to read some correspondence that has been sent to me from the Canadian Association of Municipal Administrators. And it says the Long Service Recognition Awards Program of the Canadian Association of Municipal Administrators is dedicated to honoring and celebrating the dedication of our members to public service and municipal management, a cornerstone priority for our association. These awards are based on the duration of full-time paid employment in municipal government, specifically in management roles such as Chief Administrative Officer or those reporting directly to them. Recognition is granted at the 10-year mark and subsequently in 5-year intervals. This year, it's our privilege to acknowledge the commitment of your Chief Administrative Officer, David Barrick, for his remarkable 10 years of service in municipal government management roles. David's dedication to his role has undoubtedly contributed to the advancement of your municipality, and we are pleased to recognize his achievement. He's already received his PIN, but at this time, on behalf of council and staff of Thames Centre, I'd like to echo these sentiments and to congratulate you. So great. Thanks, David.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Okay. So the next one, there are no presentations. So we'll move into the planning meeting, the public planning meeting. And a mover and a seconder that council adjourn its regular meeting at 5:03 p.m. and move into public meetings pursuant to the Planning Act to consider applications listed on the March 25th, 2024 council agenda. The first one is item 7.1. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed the mover and seconder. Terribly sorry. Deputy Mayor Smybert and Councillor Heeman. All in favor? Thank you. Sorry about that. Moving into then application, I'm sorry, agenda item number 7.1, applications for consent concerning the property at 2270 Rath Street in Putnam. Mr. Bancroft.
Thank you, Mayor. So the purpose of the consent application is to sever the subject property into 4 lots to support residential development in the form of single detached dwellings. And also the purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone the lots to be severed and the lands to be retained to a hamlet residential zone, an HR category, with the exception of the flood prone lands along the Reynolds Creek drain, which extend the length of the property, those lands are to be rezoned to the environmental protection or EP zone. And just in terms of background, the subject property, it's a 9.5 acre parcel of land, and it's bounded by 3 streets as shown on the plan, on the map on the screen, excuse me. So on the east side of the property, we've got Putnam Road. On the north side of the property, we have Hamilton Road. And in terms of existing driveway access off of Rath Street. The property contains a single detached dwelling, which is serviced by private services in terms of a private well and septic system. And that residential driveway is also shared with another dwelling located on a separate parcel of land, which is known municipally as 2757 Rath Street. The lands currently are used for the cultivation of field crops, being a remnant farm parcel with access available off Putnam Road. The remainder of the property backs onto the Reynolds Creek, which flows in a northerly direction and makes its way to the Thames River. The Reynolds Creek along the east side of the property, it contains flood-prone lands, as well as natural heritage features. It's also important to note that this property is affected by an easement in favor of Hydro One, which accommodates a set of overhead wires approximately 65 meters off Putnam Road. And they run in a north-south orientation before tying into Rath Street. There's also an existing municipal drain, the Putnam Drain, which runs along the south side of the property. And also these lands are a designated hamlet under the official plan. And oddly enough, they're zoned agricultural. They're zoned agricultural because this is a legacy property in that the official plan was updated some time ago to include these lands wholly within the hamlet of Putnam. However, the zoning, simply put, hasn't been updated to catch up with that designation. So the applicant is proposing to sever 4 lots, which would have frontage on Putnam Road, each having a frontage of approximately 31 meters and an area of 0.66 acres. And given the absence of full municipal services in Putnam, these lots would be serviced privately with their own well and septic system. The lands to be retained, they would have a frontage of approximately 20 meters along Rath Street and an area of approximately 6.9 acres. These are the lands that contain the existing dwelling and also lands adjacent to the Reynolds Creek drain. It's also important to note, Your Worship, that the applicant also intends to dedicate an easement in favor of the municipality to recognize the existing Putnam drain. So that's the area shown in highlight and yellow highlight on the map on the screen. Those lands currently contain the Putnam drain along the southerly limit of the property. And an easement is proposed considering municipal drains are not registered on the title of affected lands. I've conducted my analysis as outlined in my report, and certainly there's direction offered by the provincial policy statement, the County of Middlesex official plan, and the Thames Centre official plan. They all encourage intensification in settlement areas, provided that the development is compatible with the surrounding area and represents an orderly and efficient use of land and infrastructure. So within Putnam, specifically in the absence of full services, development opportunities are limited to infilling of the existing development pattern. And considering the lands to be severed as outlined on the screen, those areas shown in red highlight, considering those lands are not orderly and consistent with the existing lot pattern to the south, I do have some concern in that regard. Those existing lots, in my opinion, are better suited if they were of greater depth compared to the subject proposal. And what I mean in greater depth, Mayor, I mean consistent with the lot pattern to the south. I'm satisfied that the consent process is appropriate as a means to subdivide this property and not by a plan of subdivision, considering these lands are already constrained by the presence of the Reynolds Creek drain and must rely on larger lots to support private servicing, given the absence of full municipal services. It's important to note, Your Worship, that during the pre-application stage, the applicant advised that it was not economically feasible to develop the site by plan of subdivision with a new road, potentially with the extension of Rath Street, which would veer south and then in an easterly direction would tie in with Couch Road. Such road alignment would yield approximately 6 lots compared to the 4 lots that are being proposed. And given that the subject lands have frontage on a public road, being Putnam Road, and private servicing is required on a per lot basis, a plan of subdivision is not necessary for the orderly development of the land. Moving right along, in terms of the Thames Center official plan, it does include evaluation criteria used to evaluate consent applications, including having safe and suitable access to a public road, appropriate soil and drainage conditions, and lot configurations and dimensions to permit proper siting of buildings. So in all, most of those points have been largely addressed or are capable of being addressed through conditions of consent. But at the same time, as I mentioned previously, I do have some concerns about the lot configuration of the lands to be severed, which would result in a highly irregular retained parcel. But those impacts can be mitigated again by by extending the depth of the lots to be severed to be consistent with the lotting pattern to the south. I've also evaluated the rezoning application based on the criteria that's outlined in the Thames Center official plan. And I'm satisfied that all of that criteria has been met. I have no concerns with the rezoning application as applied for, considering it does not affect the lotting of the property, as the area along Reynolds Creek that is to be rezoned to environmental protection and is to remain undeveloped. At the same time, Mayor, I do have included in my report, should council wish to approve the subject applications as submitted, I do have wording included for council's consideration, including conditions of consent, which would be appropriate in my opinion. In terms of comments received in the circulation of the application, from the County of Middlesex, the county engineer has indicated a requirement for a land dedication for widening purposes, not only along Putnam Road, but also along Hamilton Road, should those right-of-ways not be of sufficient width. The county engineer also notes that he has serious concerns with the development of new residential driveways in close proximity to the intersection of Putnam Road and Couch Road, and also about the drop in grade behind the sidewalk that would result in a low area and potentially residential driveways to be constructed with a steep grade. He's noted that it's highly recommended that alternative access solutions, including but not limited to back lot access through the extension of Rath Street or the creation of a window street, be evaluated and considered to eliminate or reduce the safety concerns for these proposed residential lots. Your Worship, we did have a pre-application meeting, as mentioned at the beginning of my presentation. The county engineer was present at that meeting, and I just wanted to state for the record None of these concerns were mentioned during the pre-application stage, other than the need for the widening of the county road. In reviewing these comments with our Director of Public Works, I did speak to Mr. Craven about these concerns, to which we don't believe that these concerns are as significant as noted by the county engineer, simply put. From the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, we did receive comments subsequent to the preparation of my report. They have no objections with the application as submitted. They also note they may not have any concerns with an amended application as suggested by staff, considering there would need to be some additional survey work to confirm the elevation of the lands as it applies to if we had extended lots, that lotting in proximity to the hazard lands. Our Director of Public Works, he's noted Public Works supports planning staff's position in having the lots to be severed extended and consistent with the lot pattern to the south. This would eliminate the remaining parcel of agricultural land that would require access to Rath and or Marshall Streets. He also notes Public Works also agrees with the requirement to establish a right-of-way easement for 2757 Rath Street property. So that's the existing dwelling that's on a separate parcel of land from the subject property, which relies on a shared driveway to gain access to Rath Street. As I mentioned previously, I do have conditions of consent included for council's consideration should they wish to approve the application as submitted. And it does include a condition requiring the need for an easement to establish that right-of-way to legitimize that shared driveway arrangement. Our chief building official, he notes that the proponent needs to provide evidence from an Ontario land surveyor, which shows the extent of the easement in favor of Hydro One, which may impact the placement of buildings and structures. And also that the proponent be advised that the lots appear to contain regulated lands, which would require approvals by the authority prior to the issuance of a permit. To date, Your Worship, no comments were received by the public. So it is my recommendation, as noted in my report, that these applications for consent be deferred to allow the applicant an opportunity to address the concerns raised by myself with respect to extending the depth of the lots to be severed consistent with the existing lotting pattern to the south to ensure conformity with the Thames Centre official plan. I'm here to answer any questions, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Bancroft. So at this time, is the applicant or the owner in the room who wishes to speak?
Yes, Your Worship. We've got the agent, Michael Pye, coming in.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Pye. Can you hear us?
I can hear me now?
Sorry. Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, you can hear us. Sorry. I appreciate you guys taking the time to let us address these concerns. We spoke with Mark about the extension of the lots. We were under the impression that Upper Thames Conservation Authority had issues with us fragmenting the ownership over the river in the back as those properties start to extend into some more naturalized areas. So they had issues with that. So we felt it was prudent to keep those lots a little bit back from them in order to comply with their concerns. So that's kind of where we stood with the situation at this point. We're welcome to discuss it further if you guys would like to do that.
Thank you. Before, Mr. Bancroft?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to provide some clarification. So the idea is not to extend the lots into the regulated area. The idea is to extend the lots to essentially coincide with the edge of the cultivated land, in that the natural hazard area, along with natural heritage features, those areas would remain intact and undeveloped. So I just wanted to make that clarification, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Bancroft. Anyone else in the chambers or online from the public?
No, Your Worship.
Okay. All right, so then I'll turn it over to council for some questions or comments. Councillor Heeman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a question to the applicant. I'm just wondering, do you have any future development plans for the remaining cultivated area, or what's to be left with the hamlet residential? Or would you have any opposition to extending the lot lines?
Thank you for your question. No, our intentions were to retain as much of that land as possible for personal use. When we purchased the land back in June, we're somewhat local from the Ingersoll area, and we felt like it was a nice property to own. Unfortunately, when we purchased the land, part of the, I guess the price was part of the, I guess the increase in price that we would have normally paid for that piece of land had the idea of the potential development for those 4 lots as like an embedded situation. So we understood that, and we kind of went into it with that in mind. So it wasn't our intention to buy the lots or buy that land and to actually develop it. We actually would prefer to keep as much as we possibly can for personal use.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council or comments?
I have a question, Mayor. It's Chantal.
Go ahead whenever you're ready.
My question's directed to Mr. Bancroft. I was just wondering why we're focusing on the pattern to the lots on the south instead of the pattern to the lots on the north, considering that these 4 lots actually align with the 2770 property to the north.
Mr. Bancroft?
Thank you. Thank you for the question from Councillor Crockett. As noted in my report, it speaks to the lotting pattern to the north, yielding much smaller lots compared to the lotting pattern to the south. The reality is that the lotting pattern to the north would not be permitted according to today's standards, which require larger lots to accommodate development on private services, considering the soils found in the area. Thank you.
So just one follow-up question then, Mr. Bancroft, is the current size of these lots as presented today, did they allow for the room to have the serviced areas in them without the extension?
Through Your Worship, yes, they would, based on an analysis that was conducted by a qualified professional submitted with this application, that being from Boss Engineering.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything further, Councillor Crockett?
No.
Okay. Just for my own interest, can you tell me again the size of the 4 lots at the moment?
So Your Worship, they are 0.66 of an acre in size.
Are there any other questions then from council? Deputy Mayor Smybert.
Thank you. And this goes to the applicant. Mr. Pai, you'd indicated that you wanted to use the retained portion for your use. Can you just give us an idea of what you'd want to use that property for, please?
Sure. We would, we grew, I guess we had a piece of land that we recently we had to get rid of. And this kind of gave us the ability to potentially maybe build out on this property with like a shop and a couple other things. And and still be local and still be close to town. And it was kind of in an area we liked. Our intention was always to live there, and that still continues to be our expectation. The extra land, I guess I wanted to add one more point. When we discussed with the size of lots, with those lots being much bigger, we did run into issues of affordability with the community. We've spoken to a few people in town, and they did let us know they would have some interest. But there is, once you get past 1.2 acres in size, the property values go up quite a bit for market price anyways. And not that we want to, we don't want to limit, the what we are offering to people. However, this felt like a comfortable price point for what we felt comfortable with as well. So there was that aspect as well. It wasn't, we're not trying to minimize the size of these lots for personal reasons, I guess I'm trying to say.
Thank you. Anything else from council? So then, Deputy Mayor Smyber.
Thank you. Just, I guess procedurally then, if council decides to defer, and then you're going to have discussions with the applicant. I understand that the application will come back whether or not there is a change to the application. Is that correct?
Yes, that is through your worship. That is correct, Deputy Mayor Smyer.
Okay, anything else from council before we move on? Nothing? Okay, then you have a motion before you that recommends deferral. And I'm wondering if we have a mover and a seconder on this. Councillor Lockie, you're moving? Move for deferment. Okay, do we have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Smyber? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Yeah, I will ask. Tom, are you opposed? Chantal, how are you voting on this one?
I'm opposed as well.
Okay, okay, we have a split vote. Then, in this particular case, then I will side with council to have another look and defer, and have it brought back to council. When would that be, Mr. Bancroft? Or would that be fairly soon, or?
Your worship, I'll have to engage in discussions with the applicant
Okay.
and then
Yeah, that's
follow up. So
fair enough.
thank you.
Okay, then. All right. Well, then the motion will be then accepted to defer until another meeting. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Pye, for your attendance.
No, thank you very much for listening.
You're welcome. Okay, then we will move on then to item number 7.2, application for consent for zoning bylaw on Wellburn Road. The municipal address is 24089 Wellburn Road. And Ms. Cortez, you're doing this one? Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. So the purpose of the consent application is to sever a parcel of land to facilitate the disposal of a dwelling surplus to a farming operation as a result of farm consolidation. The purpose of the rezoning application is to rezone the balance of the farm to prohibit any new residential use. The subject property is a 74-acre farm located on the west side of Wellburn Road, County Road 27, south of Elginfield Road, Highway 7. The lands are designated agricultural within the Thames Center official plan and are also zoned agricultural within the zoning bylaw. The property is used primarily for the cultivation of field crops and contains a single detached dwelling and a pole shed. The lands to be severed would have a frontage of approximately 73 meters along Wellburn Road and an area of approximately 0.8 hectares, and would contain the dwelling and the pole shed. The lands to be retained are vacant and would have a broken frontage of approximately 223 meters along Wellburn Road and an area of approximately 29 hectares. The applicant is also proposing to rezone the lands to be retained from the agricultural zone to the site-specific agricultural A-45 zone to prohibit any new residential use. So the provincial policy statement and the County of Middlesex and Thames Center official plans generally permit lot creation in agricultural areas for a dwelling surplus to a farming operation as a result of farm consolidation, provided that criteria has been satisfied. Staff are satisfied that the criteria has generally been met. Any issues regarding the location of the septic system and well can be addressed through conditions of consent. Planning staff are satisfied that that the subject applications are consistent with the provincial policy statement and in conformity with both the county and Thames Center official plans. In regards to agency comments received during the circulation of the subject applications, the county engineer advised that owner will be required to dedicate lands up to 18 meters from the center line of construction of Wellburn Road if the right-of-way is not already to that width. The chief building official advised evidence from an Ontario land surveyor, which confirms all structures are compliant with the zoning bylaw, will be required. Additionally, evidence which confirms the existing septic system and well are wholly contained and compliant with zoning will also be required. The drainage superintendent advised a drainage reassessment is required. No comments or concerns were identified by the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority or the Director of Public Works. No public comments have been received to date. Planning staff recommend that the consent application be approved subject to the 9 conditions noted in the report for the reasons outlined in the report. And also that the zoning bylaw amendment application be approved in principle and that staff be directed to prepare the necessary amendment for council's consideration at the next regular meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. All right, is anyone here who is either the owner or the applicant ready to speak? Would you like to state your name and your address then? Are you the owner? Okay. They're going to bring you a mic.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council, for looking at my application. And yeah, I'm a farmer from northern, Thames Center. What was your other questions you would like to know? Yeah, the barns have all been removed, from that property. So yeah, it's cleaned up and ready to sever. So thanks.
All right, thank you. Okay. Do we have anybody online or in the room who wants to speak to this matter as well?
No, Your Worship.
Okay, then. Any questions from the members of council regarding this particular item? Nobody? Okay. Chantal, just confirming nothing from you?
Your Worship, Councillor Crockett is no longer online.
Oh, okay.
I'll let you know if I see her come back in.
Sure. All right, then, thanks. Okay. Councillor Heeman.
I would like to move the proposed recommendation.
Okay, there's a 2-part recommendation. So, first of all, we'll close the meeting. No further discussion. So, the public meeting is now closed. And, there's a recommendation for approval for consent of B1-24, subject to the 9 conditions as included on the agenda. So is that the one you're moving, the part 1? Okay, Councillor Heeman and then Deputy Mayor Smybert. All in favor? Okay. That carries, thank you. So as to the second part, recommendation for approval of the zoning amendment. A mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Smybert and Councillor Lockie, all in favor? Okay, that carries. Thanks very much. Thanks for your attendance. All right, now we're going, item number 7.3 is to close the public meeting, that the planning, mover and a seconder, that the planning meeting, public planning meetings adjourn at 5:34 p.m. in order to sit as a committee of adjustment under the Planning Act to consider the application listed on the March 25th, 24 council agenda. Councillor Heeman and Deputy Mayor Smybert. All in favor? That carries, thanks. Okay, Councillor Crockett is absent from the meeting anyway. So it's Alana this time. Okay. if you want to go ahead, this concerns the minor variance application on behalf of Ryan Crawford and Chantel Crockett as applicants, and V&V Homes, care of Luke Vanden Bosch, agent, and the property is 2304 Mossley Drive. So whenever you're ready.
Thank you, your worship, through you. So the purpose and effect of this application is to seek relief from the Thames Center Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw with respect to the maximum floor area requirement for accessory buildings to allow an addition to an existing accessory building. The subject property is a 0.8 acre residential lot located in the hamlet of Mossley. The lands are designated hamlet residential according to the Thames Center official plan and are zoned hamlet residential according to the zoning bylaw. The lands contain a single detached dwelling with a floor area of 140 square meters and an existing detached garage shop with a floor area of 149 square meters. The applicants are proposing to construct a lean-to with a floor area of 74.3 square meters, which would result in the garage and shop having a total floor area of approximately 220 square meters, whereas the maximum floor area for accessory buildings in a residential zone is 90 square meters. The lean-to addition would be constructed on the east side of the existing garage shop and would be used for outdoor personal storage. The variance was evaluated against the 4 tests of a minor variance. Staff is of the opinion that the variance meets all 4 tests, being that the variance is considered minor in nature, desirable for the appropriate use of the land, maintains the general intent and purpose of the official plan, and also maintains the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. Unacceptable adverse impacts are not anticipated given that the lean-to addition would be approximately 30 meters from the easterly lot line and 9 meters from the northerly lot line. The lean-to would be screened from view from the road by the dwelling and generally from view from neighboring lands to the east by existing trees along the easterly property line, and this would mitigate visual impacts. It's also important to note that although the existing garage shop is greater in size than the dwelling and the proposed lean-to would increase the size of the building, it's not anticipated that a lean-to addition would increase the usability beyond what we can consider reasonable for a hamlet residential lot. In regards to comments received from staff and agencies, no comments or concerns were identified by the county engineer, Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, Director of Public Works, the drainage superintendent, or the chief building official. No public comments have been received to date. Staff recommend that the minor variance application be granted for the reasons outlined in the report. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Curtis. Are there any comments from the agent? No, none at all? Okay, and anybody online or wishing to
No, your
speak?
worship.
Okay. So I will turn this one over to council. Any questions? None? Okay. Councillor Heeman,
I would move the recommendation.
and a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Smyberg, all in favor? That carries then. Thank you very much. So at this time, we will adjourn the Committee of Adjustment, and the time for the clerk is 5:38 p.m. A mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Smyberg, seconded by Councillor Heeman. All in favor? Okay, thank you. Right, item number 9, the adoption of the minutes of the regular council meetings of March the 11th to be approved as circulated. A mover and a seconder. Councillor Lockie and Councillor Heeman. All in favor? Motion carries. Moving on now to item number 10 of the consent agenda. Normally, the items are received in one motion. But in this particular case, I'm wondering if there's any appetite for council or councils to consider either any of items 10.1, 10.2, and 10.3. Any further discussion? Councillor Lockie.
Yes, your worship, I would like to put aside item 10.3, and I'd like to make the recommendation as the chair of the Environmental Advisory Committee to follow suit with Tay Valley Township and submit a similar declaration.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that? Deputy Mayor Smyberg? All in favor? Okay. Is Chantel back online or is she offline now?
No, your worship, she's still not here.
Okay, then, thank you. In that, so we've called for the motion, so I guess all is in favor, and the motion carries. Thank you. So that's item 10.3. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to either 10.1 or 10.2? Deputy Mayor Smyberg.
Great, thank you. I was wondering if council would be willing to endorse 10.2, which is the City of Quinte West, the housing funding. I see that certain policies have been enacted by the federal government that impact housing and development within municipalities, and certainly in order to get the houses and the development constructed, it would certainly would be very helpful if there's some associated funding that would come from the federal government to the municipality. So not that I think that all of these resolutions actually have an impact, but I think it's important for us to endorse that particular resolution.
Thank you. Would anyone like to support that? Councillor Lockie? All in favor? Okay, that carries, and we will do that then. So then that leaves us in consent agenda items to move 10.1 and 10.4. A mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Lockie and seconded by Deputy Mayor Smyberg. All in favor? Thank you. That's carried. All right, we'll move on to reports of departments. The first one being council and board remuneration and expenses. Emily, when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Worship. As per Section 284 of the Municipal Act, the treasurer is required to report on council and board member remuneration and expenses before March 31st of the following year. For 2023, these expenses totaled $129,144. In July of 2022, you'll recall the council approved a remuneration rate increase for 2023 based upon a local municipal survey that resulted in the positions being paid at the 55th percentile. Conventions attended last year also included the Association of Municipalities of Ontario and the Rural Ontario Municipal Association. It's important to note that all of these costs were within the 2023 approved budget lines. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks very much. Any questions from members of council? Seeing none? Then do I have a mover for the recommended motion to receive this report and a seconder? Deputy Mayor Smyberg and Councillor Heeman. All in favor? Thank you. That's carried. Next item on the agenda is 11.2, the 2023 Drinking Water System Summary Report. And Mr. Craven.
Thank you, Your Worship. Before you, Council Report PWES 00224. Purposes of this report is to inform council and satisfy the regulatory requirements of the Safe Drinking Water Act and Ontario Reg 170-03, which require these reports to be presented to the system owners, which is council, no later than March 31st of the following year. Section 19 of the Safe Drinking Water Act extends the legal responsibility to the owners of the drinking water system and requires that they exercise a level of care, diligence, and skill with regard to the drinking water system. The drinking water summary reports, which are attachments A and B of this report, are a compilation, I can say that when I'm not here, of water quality results, operational performance, and the ministry objectives for council to review. In addition to the summary reports, the most recent
MECP inspection reports have also been attached as attachment C and D. The primary purpose of an MECP inspection is to confirm compliance with relevant legislation and evaluation conformance with ministry drinking water policies and guidelines. During the Dorchester drinking water system inspection, there were 2 non-compliance items identified relating to the addition of operation manual procedure and also a record-keeping requirement that staff corrected immediately. The report also included a best management practice recommendation of implementing further disinfection byproduct reduction measurements. As a quick background on this item, disinfection byproducts are formed when a disinfectant, in our case chlorine, reacts with the naturally occurring organics in the source water. They're measured by testing the levels of THMs and HAAs in a treated water system. The ministry have been kept well informed of this beginning in 2022, and during the time of this inspection, staff have taken various actions to reduce the disinfection byproduct levels, THMs, HAAs, in the Dorchester drinking water system, including using the assistance of the Walkerton Clean Water Center to complete a pilot project to help reduce the natural organic matter. Stantec Consulting have also been contracted to draft a report with THM and HAA reduction options that is intended to be completed next month. The report will contain recommendations and options, including estimates that will be presented to council during further budget considerations. In addition to the operational studies and reports, staff also are drilling exploratory wells to increase the level of quality and quantity of our water supply. The Thorndale drinking water system inspections identified 1 non-compliance item and 1 best management practice recommendation that staff implemented immediately. If you have any questions, any of these items, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Jared. All right, so are there any questions from council about these reports? Nope, seeing none? No. Okay, a mover and a seconder to receive the report. Councillor Heeman and Deputy Mayor Smybert. All in favor? That motion's carried. Thanks, Jared. Hi. Councillor Heeman.
For some reason it slipped my mind that I should declare a conflict of interest with relation to 11.3 as I am employed by a business which produces beverage alcohol.
All right, so that's noted by the clerk then. All right, thank you. So, the clerk is going to present the next report on the municipal approval for licensed retail stores to sell beverage alcohol products on specified holidays. Whenever you're ready.
So staff received a letter late last week requesting approval in a written form to allow the Thorndale Food Market to sell beverage alcohol on Good Friday and Easter Sunday. In researching this, we do have the ability to approve them selling it at their convenience outlets on statutory holidays. It used to restrict the number of statutory holidays, but a recent update in 2023 allows them to sell it on any of the statutory holidays with written municipal approval. So this is requesting a delegation from council to staff to issue these letters, should you approve. And you also at this time have the ability to restrict it, say, in the delegated authority to say only on certain holidays, or it could be open to any holidays. Currently, the Thorndale Food Market is not open on Christmas Day or Boxing Day.
Okay, thank you. Any questions about this item? Deputy Mayor Smybert.
Yeah, I don't have any concerns at all with respect to delegating this particular authority to staff. Do we have a delegation bylaw though, and would that need to be amended to account for this?
We do, so that would come back. If you delegate us the authority, we are planning on bringing it back anyway with some updates. So it would be included in that, but you could, that's why if you delegate it for us to issue it for this, just for this one. Since it was a time sensitive matter.
Good. Any other questions on that? Okay, at this point then, I'd like a mover and a seconder to receive the report. So Deputy Mayor Smybert and Councillor Lockie, all in favor? Okay, that carries then. Thanks very much. All right, Mr. Bancroft, you're back again. So this is item 11.4, the deeming bylaw and road closing bylaw request on behalf of Ellen Smulders, the applicant. Property address is 3775 Gore Road. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is a request to consider a deeming bylaw and a road closing bylaw. To deem a plan of subdivision not to be a registered plan of subdivision as it impacts the subject property, and to close and dispose of the related road allowances. So just in terms of background, the subject property, it's just under 100 acres in size. It is a farm parcel situated on the south side of Gore Road, between the City of London boundary and Shaw Road, and adjacent to the CN Railway to the south, as shown on the display monitor. This property is currently designated in zone for farming purposes. However, the south half of the farm contains part of an old plan of subdivision that consists of several road allowances and 23 individual parcels of land that are held under single ownership by the applicant. So the applicant is requesting that council pass a deeming bylaw and a road closure bylaw to simply eliminate these features from the subject property. So under the Planning Act, council may by bylaw deem any plan of subdivision or part thereof that has been registered for at least 8 years to not be a registered plan of subdivision. This particular plan, I can confirm, is at least 8 years old and meets that requirement under the Planning Act. Once a deeming bylaw has been passed for lands held in single ownership, the road pattern is essentially dissolved and the individual parcels are merged to become a single parcel of land. And considering these lands are designated agricultural, they are situated in an area outside of a designated settlement area with no infrastructure or services. It is appropriate to pass a deeming bylaw under such circumstance. Also, there's no underlying subdivision agreement in place for the coordination of development-related matters, such as including but not limited to grading, drainage, the construction of roads, since this plan was created prior to subdivision control coming into place. Also, staff has had an opportunity to review our disposition bylaw, in that that bylaw states that if it would not be practical or economical to obtain an appraisal, then an appraisal will not be required when the estimated value of the land to dispose of is less than 10,000. I should also add that there should be no requirement for an appraisal in the circumstances that the affected road allowances are recommended to be transferred to the owner of the abutting land, that being the applicant, for a nominal fee, considering there is no infrastructure or physical assets associated with those road allowances. There's nothing on the ground per se that delineates any features, since on the ground we're dealing with cultivated land. As noted in my report, there was extensive consultation undertaken to ensure compliance with our disposition bylaw and also our notice bylaw. Unfortunately, there is no fee under the fees and charges bylaw for a deeming request. We did have to reach out to our legal counsel and retain those services. However, the applicant has agreed to pay the municipality's legal fees, and payment should be required prior to council adopting the required bylaws. So as noted in my report, the recommendation, your worship, is for the report to be received. And then that following the bylaws, that the bylaws as noted be adopted at a future meeting of council once the applicant covers the municipality's legal expenses. I'm here to answer any questions, your worship. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Bancroft. Are there any questions from council on this one? None? And Chantel's just checking. She's not.
Not online, your
Okay,
worship.
all right then. Okay. So did you have something, Tom? Sorry.
No, just a comment that I think that this would be a great service to the landowner, and that having these lots on title has been an inconvenience to them in terms of their ability to work with certain
Right.
institutions. So I think
Yep.
that this would be a good service, and
Yep.
I think we want to preserve lots, but we also want to preserve farmland. So I think this is one of those have your cake and eat it too moments.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? All right. Seeing that, then do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommended motion as appended? So Councillor Heeman and Deputy Mayor Smybert. All in favor? Okay. Thank you. That's carried. Then, once again, Mr. Bancroft, this is 11.5 on your agenda. Application for draft plan of subdivision for the property at 246 North Street. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So this report deals with an application for draft plan of condominium, application for draft plan of subdivision, and a zoning bylaw amendment for 246 North Street. I think it's important to note, especially for our viewers, that the County of Middlesex is the delegated approval authority for plans of subdivision and condominium. And before the county can make a decision, this proposal must first be considered by Thames Center Council and subject to a community engagement process. So my report that is before you this evening provides an evaluation of the subject applications to facilitate the residential development of the lands. This proposal was first heard at a public open house that was held on December 7th, 2023. And more recently at a public meeting of municipal council held this past January 29th. My report also provides a summary of the engagement process in terms of public and agency consultation, along with a recommendation for council's consideration. As noted on the monitor, the subject property is just under 5 acres in size. It's located on the east side of North Street, north of Minnie Street, and backing onto the Village Gate subdivision in Dorchester. While these lands are not currently serviced, municipal water is available along North Street as well as on Village Gate Drive. These lands are designated residential under the official plan, and they're also zoned for residential purposes, an R1 category subject to a holding provision. These lands are also regulated under the Conservation Authorities Act. In terms of the lotting proposals that are before you, first, we have a proposed plan of subdivision, which would facilitate the extension of Village Gate Drive, extending it in a westerly direction to tie into North Street to facilitate 7 lots to support single detached dwellings. This development would be serviced by municipal water, sanitary sewers, and storm sewers. And there's also an easement proposed between lots 3 and 4 on the south side of the Village Gate Drive extension to convey stormwater to the proposed stormwater management facility to the south, located on the condominium property. Also, in terms of lands further south, we've got a proposed plan of condominium to support 25 units in the form of single detached dwellings with a crescent-shaped private road with 2 points of access onto North Street. And similarly to the plan of subdivision to the north, these lands would also be serviced by municipal water, sanitary sewers, and storm sewers. Also being sought is a zoning approval to rezone the subject property to a site-specific residential first density zone with the inclusion of holding based on the standards requested as outlined in my report. I've conducted my analysis, Your Worship, and this proposal would be consistent with the provincial policy statement. The provincial policy states that settlement areas shall be the focus of growth and development, along with full municipal services being the preferred form of servicing in settlement areas. And this proposal demonstrates those foregoing points. Also, the provincial policy states that new development taking place in designated growth areas should occur adjacent to existing built-up areas and should have a compact form, allow for efficient use of land, infrastructure, and public service facilities. The subject property is directly adjacent to the existing built-up area on two sides, to the south and also to the east. And it would also allow for connectivity to existing infrastructure. In my evaluation of the proposed subdivision, I did have some concerns with the shape and configuration of proposed lot number 7. So that would be the larger parcel proposed on the north side of the Village Gate extension, which has very shallow depth and is quite wide. That lot is wide enough to potentially accommodate a total of 3 building lots if it was enlarged with the acquisition of lands further north. So therefore, rather than create this irregular shaped parcel as is, it would be more appropriate that the draft plan be amended to show lot 7 as a future development block, and that there be a 1-foot reserve across the frontage of the property to prevent the premature development of those lands. We could also have a holding provision included to apply to the lands, and the reserve and the holding would only be released once the lands are enlarged to support 3 building lots. So I've shared this point with the developer and their consultant, and the developer has no concerns with this approach as suggested by staff. Also, block 8, if you can follow my description. So we're also dealing with the north side of Village Gate extension where it meets North Street. There's that thin sliver of land on the north side. Those lands are better suited, Your Worship, to be included within the Village Gate Drive road allowance, so that there is no strip of land, so that the road allowance is essentially widened to include those lands. And the developer has no concerns with that approach. With respect to the proposed condominium, I did have some concerns with the shape and configuration of block 10 to support stormwater management infrastructure along the rear of units 6 to 14. So if you can look at the display, this would be actually, can you go back to the previous image, Sarah? Thank you. The stormwater management block is that feature situated at the southeast corner of the property. And you will see that stormwater management block extends in a northerly fashion with a narrow stem, sort of a panhandle, if I can call it that continues all the way north. So I've requested that the developer eliminate that stem along the rear of units 6 to 14 and that the units be extended to go as far east as the mutual rear lot line of the existing Village Gate subdivision single detached lots. That change is warranted, in my opinion, Your Worship, to avoid this area from being fenced and becoming a no man's land. I'm trying to get ahead of potential bylaw enforcement complaints that could occur. And certainly the developer has no concerns with modifying his plan as suggested by staff. I've also gone through, Your Worship, and evaluated the zoning bylaw amendment application against the criteria outlined in the official plan. And I am satisfied that the evaluation criteria has been met. Also, under the official plan, there's policy direction for the draft plan approval process, which requires the developer to eventually enter into an agreement with the municipality to be registered on title and to ensure the proper and orderly development of the lands. Recommended draft plan approval conditions for both the plan of subdivision and the plan of condominium are attached to my report for council's consideration. Some of the key conditions unique to this development include the need for a comprehensive traffic impact study that takes into account the cumulative impact of this proposal, as well as the Eva Ida Street proposal and the Auburn Developments proposal. There's also a requirement for an environmental impact study considering the existing environmental impact features that are situated opposite the subject lands on the west side of North Street. Also, the need for the developer, considering that there is required infrastructure to service this development in the form of a pumping station and a force main to facilitate wastewater conveyance. The developer will be required to enter into an agreement with the municipality for the prepayment of development charges to assist with the financing of those works. And that requirement, Your Worship, is included as a recommended condition of draft plan approval. So in all, I am satisfied that these proposals are consistent with provincial policy, conform with the county's official plan, as well as the Thames Center official plan. Moving right along in terms of the consultation process, in terms of agency comments, the county engineer has no comment. The Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, they have provided recommended conditions of draft plan approval, which are included in the list of conditions for your consideration. Also, no comment from CN Railway. Canada Post has provided standard language in terms of requirements that the developer will need to satisfy. And these are also carried over in the proposed draft plan conditions. No comment from Hydro One. No concerns from our Public Works Director. Our drainage superintendent notes that the applicant will be required to provide a stormwater management report, ensure that they have sufficient outlet for their stormwater discharge. So that is certainly acknowledged in the draft plan approval conditions being recommended. So in terms of public comments, we do have 2 written submissions from the public. And those are attached to my report for council's consideration, along with the excerpts of the minutes of the public meeting of municipal council that was held. So without further ado, Your Worship, it is staff's recommendation, as outlined in my report, that council recommends the issuance of draft plan approval to Middlesex County firstly for the draft plan of condominium, subject to the conditions attached to my report, provided the draft plan is amended as per the notations outlined in my report. And then secondly, that council recommends the issuance of draft plan approval to the County of Middlesex for the application of draft plan of subdivision, subject to the conditions attached to my report, and provided the plan is amended based on the points outlined in my report. And then lastly, that the zoning bylaw amendment be approved in principle and that staff be directed to prepare the necessary bylaw for council's consideration at the next regular meeting. I'm here to answer any questions, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Bancroft. So at this time, I'll turn it over to council for any questions or comments. Councillor Lockie, go ahead.
Through your worship, through Director Bancroft. So just kind of for my understanding, so given the cost to extend, the wastewater, and that, this isn't a huge subdivision, so the DCs on these lots won't even come close to covering the costs for the full requirements. So, and we don't have the other projects approved yet. So if this goes through, how would that be financed?
Through Your Worship, I don't disagree with the points that you've raised, and it's an excellent point in that certainly development or the extension of servicing on the north side of the river would not only rely on this proposal, but the other proposals that have already submitted requests for draft plan approval. There's no doubt that there needs to be a sufficient yield in terms of number of units required for the prepayment of development charges to assist with financing. And I can only assume that developers are not going to be in a position to front end or prepay development charges without, at the very least, having draft plan approval. So to answer your question, Councillor Lockie, development on the north side of the river certainly needs to have more development occur than simply this one. There needs to be other applications that are draft plan approved. There's also an important point worth mentioning is that there is a draft plan approval condition which is very specific in that this development is not permitted to proceed until servicing is in place and operational. So that includes wastewater conveyance in terms of having the necessary collection system, pumping station, and force main to tie into the existing infrastructure that's on the south side of the river to ultimately convey wastewater to our sewage treatment plant. Thank you.
Follow up there?
Yes, so one more question regarding that. Just for my understanding, so in the event, like it's no guarantee that the other projects will go through, if this project does get approved, will the municipality be required to pay for the full cost for the pump house and the force main?
Through Your Worship, the financing for this project originates from the development charges background study. And simply put, growth pays for growth. I don't know what the number is off the top of my head in terms of benefit to existing, but most certainly I'm confident to say that at least 85+% of this project is attributable to growth and it is to be collected through development charges.
Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? So Mark, just for my own clarification then, we can still send this through to the county for draft plan approval, but they would also put in a similar condition about the wastewater, or not necessarily?
Your Worship, we've provided the wording that I'm recommending as being appropriate for Thames Center. And for the most part, the county typically honors those types of conditions, considering they are tailor-made Thames Center conditions being brought forward to reflect, the uniqueness offered by our municipality. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Heeman.
With respect to lot 7, is there any discussions from the landowner to the north as to whether they will be entertaining a development agreement in the near future?
Through you, your worship, to Councillor Heeman. So it's my understanding through the developer that there have been discussions with that neighboring property owner. However, they are not agreeing on cost to facilitate that transaction. At the same time, ownership comes and goes. In my opinion, it's appropriate to have this sort of requirement in place to ensure that we have efficient land use and also efficient use of infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Deputy Mayor Smybert.
Just a couple of comments. I do appreciate and thank staff for including that comprehensive traffic impact study, because I do think that was a concern for a lot of the landowners on the north side of the river. It's different to do it just for this particular application, but I think there does need to be that wholesome review of the entire proposed areas to be developed. So I want to thank you for that. I do think that this is a good use of land use planning. Obviously, Thames Center could see a lot more condo type of development rather than the single family, but I like there's an interface from like Village Gate to North Street, so it can kind of continues on with that single family flow, but still incorporates the higher density. So I think it's a good plan, I think, for the use of that property.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Smybert. Anyone else? Okay. All right. So we have the motion in front of us on your agenda. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Heeman and seconded by Deputy Mayor Smybert. All in favor? Okay, and that carries. Thanks, Mr. Bancroft. We'll move on now to item number 12, reports of committees. Items listed under the reports of committees are approved by council in one motion. Council members may request that one or more items be separated from further action. And if that is not the case, then do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Lockie and Councillor Heeman. All in favor? All right, that carries as well. Thank you. So item number 13, any unfinished business? No notices of motion that I'm aware of. Okay, and any other new business? No? Okay. Right, bylaw. Item number 16, by 16.1 IT services agreement, bylaw 23-2024. Are you making any presentation? Okay. For those of you who don't know, this is Chris Bailey from IT at the County of Middlesex, helps us out. All right. Were you going to say something? Yes, go ahead.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Mayor. Just for additional context, there was an addendum report brought forward on this very matter earlier in the year with some background information respecting the updating of this service agreement with Middlesex County. At that time, Thames Center was the first out of the gate, and there was additional consultation with some of the other area local municipalities. So from an alignment perspective, council approved conceptually moving ahead, but we did want to wait to make sure that those appropriate consultations occurred. And so the version that is here now is the one that's kind of buttoned up with the other local municipalities. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Barrick. Okay, so a mover and a seconder for the motion before you. Deputy Mayor Smybert and Councillor Lockie, all in favor? Thank you, the motion carries. All right. So at this point, council will be moving into closed session for which there will be no live streaming. The live stream will resume once the closed session portion has been completed. So could I have a mover into second and seconder moving us into closed session at 6:20 p.m.? Councillor Heeman and Deputy Mayor Smybert, all in favor? That motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So we're back in open session now, and I would like to advise that during the closed session, council considered information regarding litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, or financial information that belongs to the municipality or local board and has monetary value or potential monetary value, and provided direction to staff. So going to the confirmatory bylaw, I would like a mover and a seconder to adopt the confirmatory bylaw. Councillor Heeman and Deputy Mayor Smybert, all in favor? That motion carries. Moving on now to meeting schedules. The next regular meeting of council is Monday, April the 15th, 2024 at 5 p.m. at the Thorndale Lions Community Center, followed by another regular meeting of council for Monday, April the 29th at 5 p.m. A motion to adjourn, please. Deputy Mayor Smybert and Councillor Lockie. All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chantel.
Have a good night.